Text to columns is probably the best way in Excel to separate data that's currently inside of a single cell. So if you have data that looks like this, you can use text to columns to convert it into something like this. And it gets even cooler because text to columns doesn't just separate data at blank spaces. You can specify where it needs to separate your data. So if you have data that looks like this, or any other way, text to columns is the way to separate it. Now let's get into how to make this work. The first thing that we're going to need to do is highlight the data that you need separated. So in my example here, I'm going to click on the first value that I need separated in cell A2. I'm going to drag down my selection to the bottom of the worksheet. From here, we're going to want to make sure that we're on the Data tab, and we're going to move over to the right where it says Text to Columns. And once that's highlighted, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on it. This little box is going to appear, and it's going to default to having delimited selected, which is what we want right now. Once we've confirmed that that's selected, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click next. The next thing that you need to do is make sure that you like the video that you're currently watching and subscribe to the channel. Once you made sure you're subscribed, we're ready for the next step. Now where Excel says delimiters, that's essentially Excel saying, where do you want me to separate the data at? So in my example earlier, I gave a couple of different scenarios where I had data that I needed it separated at some point. If my data looked something like this and I needed it converted into something like this, I would go ahead and I would select comma. Now, if my data looked like this, and I also wanted it to look again like this right here, I'd go ahead and select semicolon. And if I have a really unique situation where for some reason my data looks like this, and I also need it separated, I would select the other area here, and then I would just type out that symbol that I want it to separate at. But going back to my example specifically, I've got a list of names and they're all just separated by a blank space. So what I need to select right now is the space value. Once that's selected, we don't need to click next. We can actually go ahead and click finish. It's going to say that there's data already here and it wants to replace it. And the reason why it's saying that is because it's going to remove the original data and convert it. So in my scenario, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And you can see it's as easy as that. Excel has gone ahead and separated it into two separate columns, which is exactly what we were trying to do at the beginning. Now, I mentioned earlier in the video that text to columns is probably the best way to separate your data, but it's definitely not the only way. If this video didn't show you exactly what you needed to do to separate your data, check out the video here where I cover the other ways to do it. Thanks again for watching, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already.